Hey y'all, today I'm sharing a new What's for Dinner. I'm going to be showing 5 nights worth of really delicious dinner ideas. This was a super good lineup and I hope that it can help with your meal planning. I really love sharing the meals that my family enjoys in hopes that you'll make some of these recipes and you can enjoy them too. So first up, I'm going to be making some street corn, chicken, and rice bowls. One thing about me, I love anything with street corn in it, so that immediately caught my attention with this recipe. And plus, my family will pretty much always eat anything chicken and rice related. So the first thing I did was grab 2 boneless skinless chicken breasts. I got those cleaned up and trimmed in half to make 4 thinner pieces, and then there was just a random little half that I apparently froze with it, but I transferred that on over to a 8x8 casserole dish, and now I'm going to get started on a simple marinade. So that's just 2 tablespoons of olive oil, a few good splashes of Worcestershire sauce. I did measure out a 1/4 cup of soy sauce. I use low sodium, but the regular is just fine, whatever you have. I also squeezed in the juice of half of a lemon. I did a couple of small spoonfuls of some minced garlic from the jar. And here I'm just removing some of the seeds that came out of the lemon. And then I'm just seasoning it with a little bit of kosher salt and black pepper. And that's all there is to it. Gave that a good mix. I poured that all over top of my chicken. And I'm just taking that same spoon and kind of lifting the chicken up to make sure that the marinade is flowing underneath it. And then I'm going to get that covered with some cling wrap. And I'm going to let that marinate in the fridge for about an hour. Once it was time to get started cooking, I grabbed some fresh corn. You can cook this with any method that you want to. I'm going to do mine in the microwave, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. But I also got some rice started in my Instant Pot. So that's 2 cups of some long grain rice that I washed. I added in 2 cups of water, and this is optional, but I found this Lawry's carne asada seasoning when we was on vacation in Florida, and this is my first time using it. I normally don't do this with just regular white rice, but I thought, why not? It'd be some good flavor. So I just added a good amount in there, and then I'm just grabbing a spoon and stirring that on in there. And then I'm going to pop my lid on, and I'm going to set my timer for 4 minutes. And then once that's done cooking, I'm going to let it naturally release. So that could take anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes. After I got that going, I grabbed a can of black beans. I'm going to get that heating up over on the stove. And now my corn is done. So I have been doing this method for many years now. I know I've shared it at least once here on YouTube, but it has been a long time. So I'm sure a lot of y'all haven't seen me do it, but this honestly probably is my favorite method to cooking corn. It's fail proof. So basically it's 3 minutes per ear of corn. So since I did 3, I cook these for 9 minutes, and then I pull them out, cut off the end, and then I just squeeze it out, and it's cooked perfectly. There's no silks on it. It is just an awesome little hack. So I got this little corn cutter off of Amazon maybe a year ago, maybe longer. I'm not really sure. I don't use it much at all. So basically, I'm just cutting the corn off the cob, putting it in a mixing bowl, and it's super hot, so it's kind of tricky to work with. But there we go. Got it all off the cob, and now we're going to make it a street corn salad. So I did 2 tablespoons of some mayo. I added in the last of my cotija cheese. A bag of that lasts me forever. I just store it in the freezer to, preserve it, but use it up. Now I can buy some fresh. Here I'm crumbling in about a 1/4 cup of some feta cheese. I'm going to do a couple tablespoons, I'd say, of some fresh chopped cilantro. I'm also going to do the juice of about a half of a lime. And then for seasonings, I'm just going to do a little bit of chili powder. I'm going to do some paprika and then just some salt and pepper. That's it. So I'm just going to get all of that folded together, making sure to kind of break up that corn since some of it's in long strips, but that's it. So I'm going to set that to the side, and I'm going to start cooking my chicken. So I've got a large skillet out heating up. I've sprayed in some olive oil, and I'm just going to start taking my chicken out of that marinade and dropping it into that hot skillet. And I'm just going to cook it for, a few minutes on each side. These are a little bit thicker, so I would say, maybe like 7-8 minutes per side. I always use a meat thermometer to help me, but I like to create a nice sear on both sides, and then I kind of turn it down to cook it through the middle. But this recipe actually specifies for the corn and the chicken to be cooked out on a grill. I do have a gas grill, but it is a nightmare right now. It's really old. I don't know if it's savable. I keep saying I'm going to try, but I haven't done it yet. But if you want those grill marks, definitely go and grill it, but it's hot. I cooked it inside. So 2 pieces of that chicken didn't get as golden as the other ones did. I could have worked on that, but my family was hungry. They was ready to eat. So it all checked out with my meat thermometer. Everything was cooked perfectly. So I let that rest for about 5 minutes, and then I wanted to include a clip of me cutting into the chicken to show y'all how perfectly it cooked up. It was so juicy and tender and so flavorful. This was a really good marinade. We all really enjoyed it, especially my kids. They loved it. So here's a little clip of that rice once it was fully done. I love cooking rice in the Instant Pot. It turns out perfect every single time. Nice and fluffy, and I really like the addition of that seasoning. It definitely elevated it a little bit. So now I'm going to start assembling my bowl. I've got the rice in the bottom, followed by the street corn salad, a good handful of that chopped chicken. I did a good couple spoonfuls of those cooked black beans. I did a good dollop of sour cream, and I absolutely love avocados, so I did dice some up, added on there a little bit of salt, and then I did a couple lime wedges. To me, visually, this doesn't look too exciting, but it was such a huge hit. It's definitely a new family favorite. Both kids went back for seconds, and they still have days where they can be pretty picky, so that was a huge win. Next up, I'm going to be making some hamburger steaks with a country gravy. So to 1.5 pounds of ground beef, I'm going to be adding in a half a cup of some plain breadcrumbs. I'm going to add in 1 egg, so I'm just cracking that into the same measuring cup I just used. And it's optional, but I wanted to mix it up with a fork before adding it into the meat. That way I don't have to overwork the meat later trying to break up the egg, you know. I'm also going to go in with several dashes of Worcestershire sauce since it goes so good with ground beef. And then I'm going to season it generously with onion powder, garlic powder, salt, and black pepper. And then I'm just going to go in with my hands and get it mixed until it is just combined. This is the best way to do it, with your hands. And one thing that I really love about this recipe, including the gravy that I'm going to be showing here in a bit as well, is it uses really simple ingredients, pretty few ingredients, and these are all things that I pretty much always have on hand at my house, so I can pretty much make this at any given moment, and it is really quick to cook up. I had dinner on the table in no time, and I just love that for busy nights. So basically I divided that meat up into 6 balls. I just kind of eyeballed it, trying to make it even, just kind of went back around and kind of felt it to see if it all about weighed the same. It's really not that serious, but now I'm just going in and forming these into patties. And since I'm not making actual hamburgers like for a bun, they don't have to be perfect at all. So do the best you can. Here they are, all patted out and ready to be added to my hot skillet. So this is the biggest skillet that I have, and I heated it up to about a medium-high heat before dropping the patties on in there. You definitely want to make sure they're not overlapping or anything. And I let these cook for about 5 minutes per side, I'd say. So here, I'm just getting these flipped on over so that the other side can cook. And as you can see, they have a beautiful golden brown sear on there. So that's exactly what we want to see. I also have my oven preheated to 300 degrees because I am going to be transferring these onto a cookie sheet. And I'm going to let these go in the oven for 15 minutes. That way they can finish cooking through. Those were about 90% cooked through before. And it'll also keep them hot while I am making this gravy. So in that same skillet with the leftover hamburger grease in there, I added 2 tablespoons of butter. You want about 4 tablespoons in total of fat. So I had about 2 tablespoons of the hamburger grease and then 2 tablespoons of butter, like I said. Melted that down and added a 1/4 cup of all-purpose flour to it. Got that whisked in and lump-free. Let the flour cook out for a couple of minutes, and then I added in some onion powder, garlic powder, and just a pinch of cayenne pepper. And then once it was golden brown, I let it cook for a few more minutes. Once it was golden brown, I added in 3 cups of whole milk. I really like to use whole milk in my gravy dishes because it just makes it so much better. And it will start to thicken up pretty quickly. As soon as it starts to heat up, it's going to thicken. And at that point, I like to go in with salt and plenty of pepper because we like a really peppery gravy. But here is those hamburger steaks straight from the oven, and I definitely wanted to show y'all how good the consistency of this gravy turned out. To me, this is perfect. This is exactly how I like it, and as it cools down, it will thicken up a little bit more. So here's what it looks like plated up. I also made some homemade mashed potatoes. I, of course, added plenty of gravy to that and extra pepper on everything. And then my dad actually made these green beans. He picked them from a garden, cooked a big batch, and sent us home with a big bowl of it, and they were amazing. They went so good with this meal. But these hamburger steaks and gravy was honestly a 10 out of 10. The meat was flavorful and just cooked so good, and we love the gravy. Next, I'm going to be making a sausage fettuccine pasta, and let me go ahead and tell y'all, this recipe absolutely wowed me. It highly exceeded my expectations, and it was our #1 favorite recipe from this whole video. So I really hope y'all decide to make this. So I started off with a pound of some hot breakfast sausage. The recipe actually calls for Italian sausage, but we're not big fans of that. So I really loved this swap. And you don't have to break the meat up like I did with my hands first, but I've been doing that lately, and it just makes it go easier and smoother. But once it's about halfway cooked through, that's when I go in with my meat masher tool, and I continued cooking that until it was fully cooked, and then I drained the grease. So now I'm going to season it up really good. So I did some onion and garlic powder, some Slap Your Mama Cajun seasoning, some crushed red pepper flakes, I've been loving those lately, and some dried oregano and dried parsley. And of course, as always, this recipe will be linked down below in my description box if you want the exact measurements, although I did just eyeball all of that, as y'all can tell. And I also did cut the recipe in half to better fit my family. But to that, I also added in a 15-ounce can of tomato sauce. And I did have to turn the heat down quickly because it started to bubble everywhere. So here I am just giving that a quick little stir. That way it's not all sitting in one spot making a mess. I also grabbed a 6-ounce can of tomato paste, and I'm just getting all of that dumped in. And I'm just going to stir that, let it melt on into the sauce and coat everything. By this point, my pot of water over there was boiling, so I am going to cook a half a box of these fettuccine noodles, and I just covered my meat sauce with the lid and let it simmer until it was done. So here we are, the pasta is cooked. I'm just getting everything switched around because I'm going to go grab a measuring cup, and I'm going to reserve some of that pasta water. I'm going to need it here in a little bit, and then I'm just going to go and drain my pasta, let that hang out on the sink, and then in the same pot, I'm going to make a white sauce to coat the pasta. So I did a half a stick of butter, and then once it was melted, I added in a half a tablespoon of all-purpose flour. So just getting those two things mixed together, and then I measured out 1 cup of some heavy whipping cream. So I'm going to give that a good stir. I've got it on about a medium heat. And then once it starts to bubble and simmer, I went ahead and added in about 3 ounces of some shredded Parmesan cheese. And I did shred it myself. I always have the best luck with that when it comes to Parmesan cheese. I did do that earlier in the day to make dinner go a little bit smoother. And then once it's melted in, you just want to season it to taste with some salt and black pepper. And as you can see, it's pretty thick. So that's why we reserve that pasta water. So I don't really know how much I added in there. I'd say a good splash. And as you can see, it thinned it out, and now it's plenty to coat all of this pasta. So I just added in that cooked and drained pasta, and I'm just coating it in that sauce. I thought the ratios were perfect, and I'm just going to dump that on into a greased casserole dish. Now, I don't know what size this dish is that I have. It doesn't say on the bottom. It is definitely not a 9x13. It is smaller than that, but I really like this for pasta dishes. So I'm just layering on all of that meat sauce straight on top of the pasta, and I'm just spreading that out into an even layer. And then I'm going to grab some shredded mozzarella cheese. I talked about this whole milk one in my last video. I recently made that switch. I used to always buy the skim milk one, but this one just melts so much better, and anything whole milk, it's just going to taste better too. So if I'm going to make a good pasta dish like this, I'm going to use the whole milk cheese from now on. So I just bake that at 350 degrees for 20 minutes uncovered, and here is what it should look like when you take it out. Isn't that just beautiful? I think that that looks so appetizing and mouth-watering, and I just cannot wait to make it again. I served it with some garlic bread. I also did a side of some steamed broccoli. But this pasta, it is just amazing. Like, I cannot brag on it enough. It is one of those recipes that you want to handwrite and hand down to your kids. And if you're trying to impress somebody, this is the recipe. I promise you, it is absolutely delicious. Up next, I'm making some Hawaiian pork tenderloin, and I'm starting off by making the marinade. So we're starting off strong with a half a cup of this canned pineapple juice, followed by a third cup of olive oil, a third cup of brown sugar. I'm also going to do a quarter cup of the low sodium soy sauce, a quarter cup of ketchup, and then a quarter cup of this sweet chili sauce. Now, this is my first time ever buying this. I found mine at Walmart. And let me tell y'all what it reminds me of. I used to work at Wendy's back when I was in high school, and they used to sell boneless wings. Let me know if any of y'all remember that. And they had an Asian flavor, and that sauce smells exactly like this bottle of the chili sauce. So I wonder if that's what it was. Anyways, I also did about a tablespoon of sriracha. For the seasonings, we're going to do a teaspoon of ground ginger, onion and garlic powder, and then a half a teaspoon of some salt, pepper, and paprika. So that was kind of a lot of ingredients, but nothing too crazy, I don't guess, especially if you lay it all out before you get started. It doesn't seem so overwhelming. But I'm just taking my whisk and I'm going to get that combined good. You really want to make sure to break up the brown sugar. And then here is the pork tenderloin that I'm going to be using. This is a great cut of meat that I honestly tend to forget about, and it's super budget friendly. I really need to start incorporating that into my meal plan more often, but I transferred that on over to a Ziploc bag, poured the marinade in, and I kind of messed up there because you're supposed to reserve a third cup of that sauce to put on the meat once it's cooked. But it was just one of those days. My mind was gone, and I dumped it all in there without thinking, and I was so annoyed about it. I thought about maybe taking it out and boiling it so it's not like contaminated, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. So, oh well, what can you do? But anyway, so I actually marinated that the day before, and then here we are the next day. I'm going to sear both sides in a hot cast iron skillet that I did add a couple tablespoons of vegetable oil to. I just did a few minutes per side to get that beautiful golden brown crust on it. I do have my oven preheated to 400 degrees, and I am going to transfer these on over to a greased foil-lined cookie sheet, and I'm going to pop those in for about 15 to 20 minutes. And while those are cooking, I am going to make some fried rice my way. So I've got my big old walkout. I've got it nice and hot on a medium-high heat, and I've added in a couple tablespoons of butter. I'm just letting that melt and kind of pushing it up the sides of it. And then I had some leftover broccoli from the pasta night, so I just chopped that up a little bit finer and dumped it on in with some white rice that I also cooked the day before, because it's always best to use cold, day-old rice for fried rice. Turns out so much better. So I'm just kind of going in and chopping it up. As it continues to heat through, it'll be a lot easier to chop up. But now I'm going to go in and season everything with onion and garlic powder and black pepper. And I'm just going to toss that all around, get everything coated in those seasonings. And then I'm going to start making a well in the middle. And I'm going to add a little bit of sesame oil. That bottle has lasted me a long time. And I just beat 2 eggs in that little ramekin, dumped it in the middle, and I'm just going to quickly scramble those eggs. Now that wok is really hot, so it's going to take like less than a minute. But once you see it starting to like form, it's no longer liquid, that's when I go in and just start working it in with the rice and the broccoli. And at this point is when I like to go in with the soy sauce. That's the most important ingredient in fried rice. So I'm going to get plenty of that added on in there. And then last minute, I decided to add this Ascent seasoning. I guess that's how you say it. I've had this forever and I never use it. And I remember watching a video once where someone said that all Chinese restaurants use that in everything. So I really do think that it did something special to it, because this was honestly the best fried rice that I have made yet. I was very proud of it. And by that point, the pork tenderloin has been resting on the cutting board for at least 5 minutes. You always want to let your meat rest before you cut it. And I know I'm going to get some comments of people saying that this is undercooked, but this is the way pork tenderloin should be. Technically, it's supposed to be at 145 degrees for it to be cooked properly. This one was actually at 155 degrees, so Yes, there's definitely some pink to it. I wouldn't want my pork chops looking like that, but for this cut of meat, this is the way to go, and it is just so juicy and tender and flavorful. You definitely want to add a little bit of salt and pepper once you slice the meat. It would have been even better with that sauce if I had remembered to reserve it, but it was still great. We really like the marinade. The pineapple juice flavor really shined through, so we all like pineapple, so it worked out, and it just paired so perfectly with the fried rice. I would definitely make it again. Lastly, I'm going to be making some Crockpot barbecue chicken legs, and I'm also going to show a new favorite side dish that I'm going to make to go with it. So chicken legs is also a really great inexpensive meat to make, and the Crockpot just cooks them so good. So I put 6 in the bottom of the Crockpot, and I'm going to grab this grind staffed all-purpose rub, and I'm going to sprinkle that on really generously because I want these to be extra flavorful, but you can use any seasoning that you want to, any type of barbecue rub, just whatever you're feeling that day. So after that, I'm going to grab some Sweet Baby Ray's barbecue sauce. That is always my go-to. It's never let me down, and I'm just going to drizzle that over the top, pop a lid on, and cook these on low. Now, after I got this going, we left to take the kids school shopping, so we were gone a big part of the day. So these probably cooked about 5.5 hours, and then when I got back, I just flipped it on over to warm. So I'm going to be making some jalapeno popper smashed potatoes. So I got about 1.5 pounds of baby red potatoes that I washed and boiled. I let those cook in the salted water for about 20 minutes until they were fork tender, and then I drained them off and just added those to a parchment lined cookie sheet. And then, as you can see, I'm just taking the bottom of a glass, and I'm just taking each potato one by one and smashing them down. So I also melted down a half a stick of butter over there on the stove. So now I'm just taking it and I'm brushing it over each potato. I actually forgot one of the potatoes. I did not butter one of them, and I did not realize it until I was editing these clips. So that's a little annoying, but let me tell y'all, it was late when I got this meal done. I was really regretting my decisions. I should not have done this on a day where we spent all day school shopping, but I am really glad that I stuck it out because, again, we found us a new favorite side dish. But now I'm just taking some Lawry's garlic salt and just sprinkling that over each potato, and then I'm also going to go pretty heavy-handed with the black pepper. My oven's preheated to 425, so I'm going to pop those in for 20 minutes, and then I'm going to pull them out and flip them each over. That way both sides can get nice and crispy. Some of the potatoes did not stay together too good, but it's truly not a big deal. We're going to be adding some cheese to it in a little bit, and that's going to kind of glue them back together. So don't stress if you decide to make these. So going back in for another 20 minutes, pulled them out. I've got some fresh jalapenos here that I washed, seeded, and diced. And I'm just sprinkling that over about half of the potatoes because I want it to leave half without the jalapenos because I know my kids, I know they're not going to eat those. I also did cook up 6 slices of bacon, so I just crumbled that up and distributed those evenly over all of the potatoes. I also shredded up a block of sharp cheddar cheese. I think that is the best cheese to complement this specific recipe, but if you just don't like sharp cheddar cheese, you could definitely swap it for something else. But after I get that added, I'm just going to pop that back into the oven for a final 2 to 3 minutes. You're only just trying to melt that cheese. So here's what they look like when they are done. Don't those just look so delicious? These were seriously my favorite part of the whole entire meal. It's just all my favorite things. And then for the barbecue chicken legs, I just took those out of the crock pot, put them on a cookie sheet with some extra barbecue, and broiled those for a few minutes. So here's my plate. I've got 2 of those chicken legs. They were so flavorful, and they were just falling off the bone. They were cooked so good. Those are always a hit. I also air fried some Brussels sprouts. I just coated those in some olive oil and garlic, salt, and pepper. Those always turn out good. And then those glorious potatoes, and we just served those with some ranch to dip. So that is all I got for y'all in today's video. I do hope that you enjoyed it, and I hope there was at least one recipe in here that you'd like to try. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you all have a great rest of your week, and I'll see y'all in my next video. Bye guys.